Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. And product development, of course, is one of the most exciting parts of building a company, but it's also one of the most challenging. And we often hear about breakthrough products that change industries, yet in reality, many products never reach their intended market or fail to gain traction after launch. And it's a mystery as to why. So today's session focuses on understanding why this happens and how teams can improve their chances of success. We'll explore the journey from the initial idea through to market adoption and look at some of the common traps that even strong teams can fall into. And our presenter today, Marco Iannito, will walk us through practical perspectives on topics such as product market fit, MVP development, validation before building, and the importance of designing products with delivery and scale in mind. So a little bit about Marco, if I may. He started his career building supercars at Ferrari before stepping away to travel across the globe, gaining exposure to different industries, markets, and of course, ways of thinking. And that mix of engineering discipline and real-world perspective now shapes the way he works with startups and established companies today. For business owners who feel constantly busy but still stuck, Marco helps identify the real bottleneck behind the slowdown, fix it at the root, and turn effort into visible progress. And he's been operating in ASEAN since 2022, and he's built his work around one thing, and that's delivering results. So since 2024, he's been with Salamander Advisory, leading our product development practice. And the aim of today's webinar is not only to share insights, but also to create a discussion. So please feel free to chime in. So over to you, Marco. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about product development. This is a very important part of my background or my story. So if it's okay, I will go ahead and share my presentation. Yes. Can you all see the screen? Yes,
Perfect.
Fantastic. So the idea today is exactly going through some of the important part that we have to take care when we approach product development. And we will do that going through a few important parts. First, a short introduction, my background and why I'm presenting today. Then we're going to talk about a case study, a failure is to point what went wrong. Then we will go through product market fit, so how to bring an idea to the real product. MVP, so the minimum viable product, that is our way to learn before we start building something. The importance of designing for delivery. And then I would like to share a practical tool that I think it's very relevant when we approach any kind of development, whether it's a physical product or even a service. And then, of course, considering my background, I wanted to share a real case study from Ferrari that I think will point why it's important to have control over our operations. So let's start from my background. As Bill was saying, I started in the automotive industry. I developed some of very fast cars as head of development, first in Ferrari and then in Rimac. Between the two, I started traveling around the world, and that was a very important part of my journey. I gained experience over different worlds outside the automotive industry. The reason why I'm sharing that is because this kind of experience, I brought it in when I joined Rimac, which was a very young company, young in terms of the company age, but also the average age of the people of the team. And our goal was one single and very easy and very straightforward: to build the fastest electric car in the world. Now, to do that, it's definitely not an easy challenge, you know. So we had to build not only the car, but the infrastructure in the company that allowed us as a team to work and deliver not only the fastest car, but to make it appealing for companies like Volkswagen to make an investment towards that on us. So fast forward, after two years of hard development, we built an infrastructure in the company made of procedure, of standards, of SOPs sometimes. They made Volkswagen investing in us. Now Bugatti and Rimac are the same company. Later on, Goldman Sachs invested even 500 million. And today, Rimac is one of the most successful automotive stories in Europe in the recent history. Now, all of this could happen because some best practices that I learned in Ferrari I was able to implement in Rimac, but not as just step by step and copying pasting what Ferrari was doing, porting in Rimac. The art is create using best practices and tailor them to the actual need that we had back in Rimac. So what I want to share with you today is some of this expertise and how we managed to deliver this kind of success, and hopefully it will bring some value to all of you. So let's start from what what happens when things go wrong. And to do that, I would like to share in a story from a former client of mine. They were building a SaaS company. It was an AI tool that was meant to develop an app by prompt. And it was a pretty interesting tool, except, of course, we are talking about a failure. So we will focus on what went wrong. Well, when they first approached me, what I found and what I saw was a very strong technical team. The company was actually going, it was not a startup, but they were pivoting from sort of service into product development. So they had actually a very good team, very strong budget. And the idea behind the product was pretty smart, no? Leveraging AI to facilitate the production and the development of an app. So the team was extremely confident and they were ready to build it. Except that since the first interviews, I understood that something was lacking in this project. They were building this project. They were pretty far ahead in their development without having any validation of the demand. That is, they never went out asking someone, "Do you actually need what we are building?" They never were able to identify what the customer could have been for such a product. And when I asked, who is your target market? Who is gonna need an easy tool to develop an app? They started listing basically 95% of the world that owns a laptop. Everybody with a laptop would need an app, according to them. And when everybody needs it, nobody uses it, except maybe Facebook. So the point here, there was not a clear understanding of the target market. And another point was there was no roadmap or tracking. That is, to the question, how far ahead are you in the development? The answer was not clear. It was a bunch of features that were thrown in the app, but with no real understanding of the maturity of the product. And that brought basically to a launch without a clear strategy of go-to-market, a clear strategy, a clear understanding of product readiness. So the effect of that was a constant delay of the launch date. In 6 months, I think we tried to launch 3 or 4 times, but by 2 days before the launch, we realized that actually the platform was not ready enough. The amount of bugs was too much for a platform to be used by the public. There was no positioning in the market because there was no understanding of the problem that we were solving. There was no understanding of our potential customer. And therefore, unfortunately, the launch was very not successful. The adoption was almost zero. Even pushing money into performance marketing was not driving the results that they were expecting. So at the end, what happened? We had a product, but no one came to use it. The market really didn't care. So I'm starting with this concept because nowadays, building a product, I think it's become one of the simplest things that we can do. Whether it's on software or it's on an actual product, the knowledge and even with vibe coding, the knowledge of how to do things is so easy that it's easy to make something. But making the right thing, understanding what we need to do is really one of the most crucial steps that we want to make before approaching product development. So this is why we started from this example. And now it's time to now once we have framed what the biggest problem can be, let's move to how to move from an idea to a product. Well, first thing, and bear in mind, I come from product development. So my background is very much into making things, bringing things from an idea to real life. And maybe too late in my career, I realized that there is a very important difference between a hobby and a product. So as a product enthusiast, most of the time I fall in love with my idea. And what happens is that I start building what I think it's relevant. I have an idea. I have the technical knowledge to make it. I start building. And on top of that, I start adding features to make it even cooler because the product is my main goal. And before I launch it, I keep adding features, I keep improving, delaying, if you want, the real answer from the market and sort of getting comfortable in my ability of building. And then I launch and hope that things go right. And one short example of real life story. So in Remats, we were a very young team. They were. I was not so young, but there was a lot of energy, and the technical level was extremely high. So at the time, we were also developing an autonomous driving system for the car. And the head of the autonomous driving system suggested that we would use, instead of rain sensor, we would use the camera to detect the amount of rain that the car is facing to trigger the wipers, which is a very cool feature if you think about it. It's innovative and you start detecting a new way of understanding the rain. But if you really think about the complexity of developing a new system versus buying an off-the-shelf sensor that you can find pretty much everywhere, easy to replace, easy to calibrate for a feature that is so important as the wipers that work, then you realize that is it really worth it to spend so much time and energy into building something that actually the final customer will never understand? So the customer will see the wipers moving or not moving. They will never know whether it's coming, the trigger is coming from a sensor or for a beautiful design software. Except on the sensor, you have a very cheap, fast, reliable solution for a core feature that is moving the wipers. On the other hand, you have months and months of development for a feature that is actually homologation relevant, so it can actually stop the sale of the car without bringing any additional value to the customer. So the reason why I'm saying that is because a real product actually starts from defining the problem, understanding the market, and then of course there is the part of testing, understanding the readiness, and then finally launch with clarity. But really the difference between a hobby and a product stands in understanding why we are doing it. And if we get that right, the likelihood of building something that gets adopted is much higher.
Marco, if I may, before you move on,
Yes.
one of the challenges that I've seen with tech companies is that the founders or the developers get emotionally connected to their ideas. Even when they will say such things as the market's wrong, we'll get it right. And they often quote people like Steve Jobs at Apple, who used to say, I'll tell the market what they want. Now, not everybody's Steve Jobs, I must admit, but the key thing is when they get emotionally connected, they can burn money, they can burn investors' funds without understanding. How do you, so what's the sort of practical methods that teams can use to distinguish between building a real product and just pursuing an interesting idea.
Uh, yes, thanks, Bill. And I think this happens more often than not. And I think they mistake. So the short answer would be go out and ask. I
Yeah.
think that the best way is really asking to potential customer, do you care about this idea?
Mm.
And they not everybody is Steve Jobs, and I agree. And unfortunately, I think in today's world we have a portrayed idea of what success is that is a little bit biased because we see the Steve Jobs, so we don't see the millions of people that did the same thing as Steve Jobs and didn't become
Failed.
Steve
Yeah.
Jobs. So, but going out and asking is, I think, the first question, which brings me right actually to the next slide. So it's perfect timing, Bill. And is what do we ask and what are we looking for when we build what is called a product market fit? How do we make sure that our idea is not something we care about, but is something that actually other people care about as well? And I think there is a nuance that sometimes is overlooked. That is, a product market fit is not just people saying, "I like your idea," or having friends that that support us, because this is a sanity check rather than product market fit. None of this information, early information, actually means people will pay for our solution. And the conversion and the having people that are not only interested, but are willing to pay for our solution really makes a product a product. That's, I think, the biggest difference between a hobby, which is something that people can like, and a product that we can bring to the market. So there are really three different things that sometimes are maybe confused is a little bit word, but maybe a little bit blend together. And it's the difference between interest. So I find it cool. Usage. So I use it. I use it once as a maybe just to try. And the willingness to pay and to pay again. This is really what we want to check when we go for when we go for our product market fit. So this question, would they pay today or would they switch from what they're using to use our product? This is the question that we want to ask. These are the answers that we want to get. So generally speaking, I would say these four questions make us or decrease the risk of us throwing, a rock in a lake and hoping to hit something. Who suffers the problem? Is there a problem in the first place, of course, and who has this problem? Going back to the example of the SaaS platform, it was not clear if it was a tool meant for the public, it was a tool meant for the institution. Who suffers is very important. Who will pay? And especially, what is our position against our competitors? How we will get an edge against our competitors so that our consumers can switch from what they have to our solution. If you can't answer this, you are not ready to build. And this is prior to investing money. We want to make sure that we set our direction in the right course so that once we start deploying capital and energies and commitment, we decrease the risk of let's say, not success. So now I think it's one of the most my most one of the things I love the most because it's really how then we have now our product market fit. So we know that we have a good idea and we have done a check in the market. We have maybe early adopters that are really interested in buying our product. What are we doing? What can we learn to shorten our time to the market for the actual product? Well, how do we test it? Well, we use an MVP, a minimum viable product. A minimum viable product, although it has a product in it, it's not actually a product. It's we build it around an answer that we want to get. And when I say product, I'm not sure about everybody here, but here again, we are not talking just about a physical product. We're talking about software service as well. This everything that we're saying can apply to a marketing campaign. So an MVP, an MVP, what is it? What is not and what it is? An MVP is not a cheap version of what we're doing. It's not a rushed launch, and it's not a half of a product. An MVP is a test that we are bringing to the market to answer one or a few specific answers. So we want to build it around a very core value that we want to validate. We want to build it in a way that it understands the reason for the product to exist and validates the problem that we are solving. And we want to get rid of features that are just not core, that are not core in that specific test. We want just to test the market. Now, this is some questions that we can use to validate that and to start building an MVP. We want to build it to understand the demand. We want to build to understand usability, for instance, revenue, adoption. I'll bring an example. I'm currently building an AI tool for, let's say, psychologists. And I'm starting with a pilot that I will start in June. Now, I'm crafting the pilot only around two questions. One is what features my users will be using. That is along the whole user journey, where will the user be stuck most of the time, and how much of that specific feature will be used across all the whole platform, and how many people are willing to use this kind of platform. That is also, let's say, price point. So all the features I'm implementing in the MVP of this specific product are the core feature of my technology, let's say, and then I'm building some markers that allow me to track how the user is using my platform. Because this way I get my answer to my question, that is, how do the user use my platform? So the MVP is it will keep its core of my identity. No fluff. The UI is it's like the 90s, but I will get a clear idea. I will get a clear idea of how the core technology is used and what of the few features I'm implementing is actually the feature that people perceive as core in their daily usage, as opposed to what I think that it's core. Instead, that might be completely wrong. And now this is a very important part. That is, so this is how we build the MVP. That is, once again, we ask a question to ourselves and we build something to answer the question. Then what do we do with the answer? So how do we create a loop? So we ship the MVP, so we deliver to the market. Then we start collecting info. In my case, I will run for sure a conversation, but I'm also collecting data to understand and quantify how the product is used. Then I will create my matrix of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And then there is one important part, the decision. What do I change? What is the answer that I get from the market, and what do I have to change in my product or in all the whole value chain of the product? That is maybe the sales positioning, maybe it's the pricing. What do I have to change, and how do I iterate this information through my team to make sure that the solution to the problem that we face and we rise during this pilot test is implemented, and how fast I can redo the same thing again to improve my product faster and cheaper. I hope that this is very clear, and I'm very happy to take questions later on. I will move forward now to another important part of product development is now that we have a clear understanding of what an MVP is, how we test the market, how can we make our product development faster by using targeted MVP. Now we face another problem, that is design for delivery. Design for delivery is answer to this banner here. That is, selling is one thing, delivery is repeatedly another. Delivering repeatedly is another. So the problem here is once you've built something, if the demand doubled tomorrow, what would break? And this has killed more early business than you can ever imagine. So quality, lead time, margin, things start breaking down when volume grows. And this is what I refer to as the Kickstarter effect. So Kickstarter, everybody I think knows Kickstarter. So you post an idea and you get patron to support your idea by investing and pre-ordering your product. Now, very smart ideas, very successful products get an unexpected amount of support. And what happens is that a great idea suddenly needs to deliver 1,000, 1,500 products in a couple of months. And they simply can't because they were not expecting the product to be so successful. And either the supply chain is not ready, or the manufacturing is not ready, or the capability of the infrastructure in general is not so ready. And then the business has a good idea, has traction, has funding, but fails to deliver. And this is, I think, the worst way of failing a business, because it's something that we really can build and understand upfront before starting building our product. So what we want to avoid, we want to have a process that is standardized enough to deliver a consistent output. We want to plan according to a certain capacity that we expect the market to be at. So that we can deliver at scale, and we avoid delays that will destroy our reputation. No cost control. This is another thing that I think is very relevant for service businesses. Imagine a marketing agency. The first thing that start growing when the business grows are the costs. Generally you have to start hiring more people to deal with more clients, and then you have to start hiring managers to deal with the bigger team. And so the bigger the market, the bigger the costs. And one thing that happens more often than not is that the margin starts being eroded, and the agency reaches a scale over which scaling would be counterproductive. So understanding the cost at scale of what we are doing is very important. And we should, by the way, try to always organize our costs so that they decrease as the scale increases, of course. Then quality control is another problem. We want to make sure, of course, as we deliver more, our quality stays consistent, so we don't have any reputation damage. And as much as possible, we want to avoid manual processes. If you think about it, Starbucks can be run by a 15-year-old kid, and Starbucks is has the same product, literally the same product as any other cafe around the world. Then instead is run by too many people. Why is that? Because they manage to organize their processes and if you think about it as a product in a way that is scalable, and therefore it can be run by a 15-year-old kid, not without with some small issue, let's say. So the decisions that we make on the product today will be the bottlenecks tomorrow. And unfortunately, going back to the drawing board when we find a problem will be extremely, extremely expensive. So what good delivery looks like? It's the negative of what we just say. So we do the right thing. So we want to be able to build consistency. with building the same output. We want to be able to address the capacity that we are targeting. We want to have a very healthy cost discipline. We want to build something where the quality is not reactive, but is proactive. So we want to build within the product, within our design, an intrinsic way of checking and guaranteeing quality. And then, of course, once again, we want to have the scalability. So we want to build a Starbucks. We don't want to build, let's say, a Michelin star restaurant. Now, let's recap 1 second. This is we've said many things, and we are almost at the end of this webinar, ready to get the questions. So, what is the journey? What we have seen so far? First of all, before starting, we started talking about why products fail, and most often than not is because we build something and nobody wants. Then we talked about the difference between a product and a hobby. Once again, always centered on on problem solving rather than how passionate I am regarding certain topics. Then we talked about the importance of solving a real problem. That we talked about how to build the product market fit, how to check that our product is actually solving a problem for people that are willing to pay. Then we discuss about how to build an MVP, the importance of the MVP, that it once again is not just a product with less features or the features that are ready at that moment. Then the drawing and designing the MVP starts in the very early stages, because we design MVP around the answers that we want to get from the market, answers that we can't just get by asking people. We want them to be hands-on with our product. Then we talked about the feedback loop, so how we feed our team with the information that comes from the MVP. And this is very often underestimated as importance. We don't throw the MVP in the market and hope for the best. We want to have a very clear, fast loop, because the sooner we implement the solution, the shorter the time to market it will be. And then again, we want to design for delivery that is taking into account the capacity, the quality, the cost at scale, and the scalability of our product. Now, before we run out of time, I want to share one important tool that I think it's easy to use, and if used properly, it's been extremely powerful in any scale, any work that I've been involved in. And this is the S-curve. I call it my product readiness GPS. It tells me where I'm at with my development, with my sales, with anything. Now, the idea behind it is that the development of anything starts slow, then it accelerates, and then it starts flattening down. And there is the 80-20 rule. It's always true. The last 20% of the development will take almost the same time as the first 80%. And if you have developed something, you know that the final touch is always painful and it takes so much time to finalize the product. And we want to use this as an information because the plateau is our signal to understand when to launch. Now, in practical terms, this is what the S-curve looks like. And this is very generic. It can be applied to, again, many industries, many stages. On the y-axis, we have the readiness. On the x-axis, we have the time. This is what the S-curve generally looks like. And we can identify 3 sections: building, accelerating, plateau. Now, imagine that we are tracking bugs of a software. When we start testing, we start developing and testing. At the beginning, we will spend as much time testing as we are developing. Therefore, the testing and amount of bugs that we will find will be low. It will be in this part here. As we start finalizing the feature, the testing will start bringing up all the issues. And this is the accelerating part. And then eventually, as the product reaches the maturity, as we fix the bugs, the rate at which we discover the bugs will be slower and slower and slower. Now, why is this important? Because this is the sweet spot for us to launch with a reasonable amount of risk. Why is that? Because we don't know how many bugs our system has. We don't know how many issues our system has. We don't know, we don't have the ceiling. But if we track constantly the growth of, let's say, the bugs, we will see at one point the rate of discovery of bugs will start plateauing. This is when we can understand that we are reaching a certain level of maturity. So most likely, the amount of bugs that are hidden within the system are less than the one that we have found. So we can launch with a reasonable amount of risk. And I've launched a lot of stuff with a reasonable amount of risk at the level that if I told you what, you would probably wouldn't drive a Ferrari. So it is a very powerful tool, and it gives us a slow indication, a low indication of readiness, which is something that we at the end want. We want to minimize the risk when we launch something. So our GPS is built around, it can be built around anything. On the y-axis, we can have how many features we have implemented, how many bugs, whatever release criteria you have, usage metrics. This is it really is so transversal, it can be used almost by any part of the development, even the contract closed with the supply chain. It follows exactly the same metrics. Imagine at the beginning you start calling your suppliers, no one will answer. Then after a few months, people will start coming back to you. You will start closing contracts, and at the end of your process, only the hardest supplier will be there to waiting for the contract to be closed. So this S curve is really, really, really powerful. And this is one thing that my mentor used to say, that is, best is the worst enemy of good. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we do as in product development is try to make things perfect. It's a mistake. It needs to be stable. It needs to be right at the right point, and then we need to deal with risk. Unfortunately, we can't take away risk. We can only manage the risk. And now it's the time for one quick example, and I will give I will start the questions. So this is a real life example, and we talk about the importance of control. So this was 2012, I think. McLaren unveils the P1, and they had a bigger rear wing than us. So la Ferrari at that point. Ferrari at that point said we can't have a smaller wing than McLaren, so we need to have a bigger wing. And there was no performance reason whatsoever. It was just we wanted to have a bigger wing. We are Italians. So what was the impact of that? Well, in the LaFerrari, the wing goes inside the engine bay. So we had to making something bigger. Meant that we had to redesign 12% of the engine bay and a very late stage of maturity of the car. We have launched already many tooling. We had to rewrite the logic for the system. We had to change many things. So the impact was very big. Now, what was the answer from the team? Well, the answer for the team was not this is impossible or yes, let's do it. The answer from the team was we can do it. This is how much it will cost in terms of budget, time, and risk. And then we empower the CEO with an informed decision that is, this is the cost, this is the potential upside of this cost. What do? We went, of course, to make the wing bigger. But the point here is, if we didn't have control of our project, we wouldn't be able to quantify the cost. We wouldn't be able to quantify the risk. And it would have been a suicidal move that it would be more close to gambling rather than developing. And this is why control allows us to avoid crisis. Now, I'm done. So I think one thing I want to share is I hope that audience here, you guys have enjoyed the meeting, the webinar. Whether you are in a product market fit, you are having issues in identifying the design for delivery or understanding your readiness. I think I'm here to uh, I'm happy to share best practices, so feel free to book a call in with me. I'm very happy to share more in detail some of this expertise. I think this is one of the perks of having a webinar. We are a community and happy to share best practices and go through all your challenges.
And I think we're coming up to time. So thanks very much, Marco, for sharing these insights today. As I say, I hear the story many times. I love it every time.
Thanks.
Product development is rarely a straight line. I think we've all learned that, and discussions like this help all of us better understand how to navigate the journey from idea to market itself. And thanks also to everyone who joined the webinar and contributed to the discussion. We hope the session was provided useful perspectives for you that you can apply in your own organizations and product initiatives. And we look forward to continuing the conversation in future sessions. In the meantime, you can see his QR code on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Marco or any of us. There's now about 50 of us in 13 countries, so we're more than happy to help you in your product development journey. Thank you very much for joining today, and thanks again, Marco.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure having you all. I hope it was insightful. It was a real pleasure from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marco. Cheers, mate.
Bye bye.